You've probably seen plaster casts in art schools and studios, but what makes them such good drawing practice? Today I'll be showing you how I drew this challenging plaster cast head from a Greek or a Roman sculpture, packed with intricate details and small forms like the locks in the hair. I'll also be explaining why plaster casts like this are so useful to draw. If you're looking to take your drawing to the next level, this type of study is a great way to challenge yourself and develop new skills. Let's get started. So, the first thing I do, as I always do with this method, is to mark the top and the bottom of the object on my page, and the left and the right, or in other words, create a box around the object. When I'm happy with the proportions of the box, the placement of the box, importantly, I start to really simplify, turn into completely straight lines, the outside of the object that I'm drawing. As few lines as possible, really. See there, I had to adjust my box slightly. I realized that my measurements were a bit off, but that's okay. That's the beauty of when you start a drawing, drawing as lightly as possible, basically. So I adjusted the box, and then I had to move the head up a bit, but I still keep all of the contours of this object as light as possible, just so it's nice and easy to rub out. So it's still keeping everything straight, making sure I don't get bogged down into any of those hair locks at this point, or ears, or anything that's sticking out of the cast. I ignore, just turn it all into straight lines. Here I wanted to get in just roughly the brow ridge, underneath the nose, and the bottom of the bottom lip. So, transitioning now into carving out the shadow shapes, or in other words, where the light stops and the shadow starts, the core shadow of this object. It's lit with theatrical lighting, this cast, which is basically in front of the object, above it, and in this case to the right, it could be to the left, but above and slightly off to one side is kind of classical theatrical lighting, which makes it a bit easier for in your drawing to make the drawing look three-dimensional. There's loads of types of lighting. There's loads of ways you can light your subjects, objects that you paint, and they're all really good. But I think to start off with, at least, this is a great lighting system to use. Finding where those core shadows are. At this point also, I'm thinking about the biggest shapes first. This is a principle that I'll talk about a lot in future videos, and I think is really helpful, which is think about things big to small. Big shapes, slowly whittling them down, slowly getting down to the smaller shapes. So the smallest shapes, the smallest detail are the things that you do last. It's a bit easier to get all your proportions correct if you work with this principle, which is big, getting the big shapes in first, and then leaving the small details at the end. Okay, now I'm happy with my proportions. I'm happy with my shadow shapes, or I'm happy with where I've put the core shadow at this point. I'm thinking, well, this is dark, so I'm just going to give it kind of a uniform grey. A lot of the areas of the darkness I've actually cross-hatched. Hatching being repetitive lines in one direction, cross-hatching being 2 or maybe 3 or 4, however many, different directioned lines on top of each other to get a darker value. I find that hatching can kind of keep your brain switched on in terms of the direction of the plane that you're drawing. For example, all up the temple area of the left side of the cast, I made sure that I was doing my hatched lines kind of in an like almost vertically up, but kind of up and slightly to the right. Just to remind, kind of emphasize that that's a plane that goes up, but it also goes back because it's a temple, so it's going away. It's a side plane, it's going away from the light. So, at this point I'm happy with the basic big shadow shapes. And I'm starting to go into the smaller shapes in the light part of everything that's lit on the cast. I'm still just hatching, and I'm still pressing pretty light, like I said, apart from the nostril and underneath the cheekbone on the left. I'm creating darkness mainly by doing a lot of cross hatching. I did a slightly heavier contour of the object in certain areas just to get that illustrative look that I like. And to push the line a little bit heavier on the part of the cast that's in shadow. But like around the cheekbones and in the beard and on the left side of the neck is mainly just from 2 or 3 layers of cross hatching. Okay, now I'm going into the locks, which was a pain, to be honest. Had to keep moving things around because they're pretty. Some of those locks are really tiny. You might not be able to see on the reference. At this point, I wanted to start to render this, start to make it look a bit smoother by using a blending stump. I used the blending stump for the areas that I wanted to keep quite dark. Or basically everything that was in darkness I used a blending stump for. Because I've noticed for me at least, with the blending stump, it retains so much of the charcoal dust on the tip that it smudges it, but it doesn't really remove that much of the charcoal. So that's why I favoured using that in the shaded areas, because it just smoothed out the shading. But it didn't make it lighter basically. But to get smoother transitions in the light areas, I used these soft blending sticks, or like blending foam things. I'll put a link to them in the description below, along with the charcoal that I'm using, which is Willow Charcoal, by the way, and the blending stump. But yeah, these soft blending foam things, they're really good for the most subtle transition, but in my experience at least, in areas where you don't want to go, areas that are quite light. I found that when I use, even if I put quite a lot of charcoal dust on them before I use them on the paper, if I use them in the darker areas, it just removes too much and it almost acts like a rubber. So why draw from plaster casts? I found that plaster casts are really useful to draw from because they are just one colour, usually white, unless they're painted. which makes it a bit easier to track, to see the really subtle shifts in values. Plaster casts also, of course, don't move, they're completely still, which means you can set up your light hitting the plaster cast and keep the light there for however long you want to do the drawing for, under the same lighting conditions. So towards the end here, this is all rendering tiny little bits, really trying to strain my eye to see the smallest little shifts in values. Alright, that wraps up the drawing for today. As you can see, working from a plaster cast of a classical sculpture like this really helps to study the forms of the face and the volumes. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below where you can download references and step-by-step guides. If you found this video useful, please give it a like, it would really help me out, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to know next. This is a snippet of me drawing the plaster cast. But if you'd like to know more on exactly how to measure the proportions, you might like this video where I talk you through step-by-step exactly how to measure and practice drawing from a 2D reference. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.